Mom, you should be grateful we're even letting you take your Bible. Those were the words my daughter Lily said to me as she kicked me out of my own home, the home I had just given her $80,000 to help buy. She thought I was a foolish old woman, someone she could just throw away. She had no idea what I was capable of. Hello, my name is Carol, and if you want to hear more stories like this, subscribe to the Mom Solo 272 Stories channel and take a moment to tell me where you're listening from. I was standing in the kitchen, checking the roast beef I had just taken out of the oven, when I heard the footsteps. It was my granddaughter Lisa's 8th birthday. The house was filled with balloons, and I had spent the last 2 days cooking all her favorites. I had just restocked the entire fridge yesterday, a grocery bill that came to over $200 of my own money. I was reaching for the platter when my daughter Lily's voice cut through the air. Mom, what are you doing? Don't even think about touching that food. I froze. I turned around, a potholder still in my hand. Lily was standing in the kitchen doorway, her arms crossed, her eyes were hard, her mouth pressed into a thin, unfamiliar line. What do you mean, honey? I stammered. The guests will be here any minute. I was just about to plate the roast. No, she said, her voice sharp and cold. I will plate the roast. Greg's parents are coming, and his sister's family. I need this to be perfect. Why don't you just go upstairs to your room? The words felt like a slap. To my room? But it's Lisa's party. I made all this food, and we appreciate it, she said, not sounding appreciative at all. She walked past me, grabbing the platter herself. But it's just better if you stay out of the way. It's cleaner, less complicated. That's when Greg, my son-in-law, walked in. He put his hand on Lily's shoulder, a gesture of ownership. Listen to your daughter, Carol. She wants to host this party her way. Just go on upstairs. We'll save you some cake. He smiled that smile of his, the one that never, ever reached his eyes. I looked from his cold face to my daughter's, my only child. I waited for her to defend me, to laugh and say, "Oh, Dad, don't be silly. Of course Mom is staying." She didn't. She just picked up the bowl of mashed potatoes, my mashed potatoes, and turned her back to me. Just go, Mom. Please. Don't make this a thing. Something inside me didn't just break. It shattered. It was a cold, silent implosion. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply took off the apron, folded it, and placed it on the counter. I understand, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Enjoy the party. I walked out of the kitchen. I walked past the dining room table, set with the good china. I walked past the living room, where the gifts were piled high. I climbed the stairs to my room, each step feeling like I was walking through wet cement. I could feel their eyes on my back, but I didn't turn around. I closed my bedroom door, and only then did the shaking start. A few minutes later, I heard the doorbell, the guests. I heard the laughter. I heard Greg's parents' booming voices. Then, I heard them all gather in the dining room. I heard my granddaughter Jenny, the 12-year-old, yell, "Time for presents!" And then, I heard them sing. They sang happy birthday to little Lisa, my granddaughter, and I was sitting on the edge of my bed, a prisoner in my own home. My own home. What a bitter joke that was. I looked around the room, at the few pieces of furniture I'd brought from Maple Street. I sat there, listening to the muffled sounds of joy from another world, and I let myself remember the lie that brought me here. It was only 6 months ago. Lily had come to me, begging me to sell my little house, the house I had built with my late husband, David, the house where I held her as a baby. "We'll live together, Mom," she'd cried. "A real family. We'll take care of you." I believed her. God help me, I believed her. I sold my home, the only true home I'd ever known, and it brought in $50,000. But that wasn't enough for them. Greg and Lily came back, saying they needed more to avoid a high-interest loan. They needed $30,000 more. I had exactly $30,000 left in the world. It was David's life insurance. It was my security, my dignity, my burial money. I gave it all to them. $80,000. I drained my entire life, every cent I had, and handed it to my daughter. My name will be on the deed, right, Lily? I had asked her, feeling a knot of fear in my stomach even then. This is my house too, legally. She had laughed. She'd actually laughed in my face, squeezed my hand, and called me silly. Of course, Mom. The lawyer is handling all of it. This is our house. She lied. It was all lies. I was sitting in a room I had paid for, but I wasn't allowed to leave. I was listening to my family celebrate a birthday, and I was forbidden from joining. I had given them my past, my present, and my future. I heard clapping, and then Greg's mother's voice, warm and proud, carrying across the dining room. Oh, Lily, you really have a gift. This meal looks incredible. Everything tastes like it came straight from a restaurant. Laughter followed. Greg chimed in, his voice full of pride. I told you, Mom. My wife's amazing. She got her cooking skills from you. And then I heard Lily laugh. That sweet, charming laugh that used to be mine. The one she once saved for me. I sat there on the edge of my bed, frozen. Every dish they were praising, I had made with these tired old hands. I had washed, chopped, seasoned, baked, every bit of it. And yet downstairs, they toasted Lily as if she were the one who'd done it all. Their voices rose, their glasses clinked, and I realized, in that moment, I was nothing more than a ghost haunting my own kitchen. That night, long after the last guest had left and the house fell silent, I crept downstairs. My heart was pounding, and I felt like a thief in my own home. The kitchen was a disaster. Dirty plates were stacked in the sink, wine glasses half full, and the roast beef platter, it was picked clean. They hadn't saved me a single bite, not even a crust of bread. I opened the refrigerator I had stocked just yesterday. It was almost empty. They had devoured everything. On the middle shelf, I found a small takeout box from 2 days ago, the kind you get from a cheap diner down the street. Inside were a few cold mac and cheese leftovers, congealed and pale. I ate it, standing there in the dark, in the cold glow of the refrigerator, eating cold macaroni with my fingers. I finally let the tears come. That night was the beginning of my new life. Not as a mother or a grandmother, but as a ghost. The birthday party wasn't a one-time thing. It was a declaration. It was the moment they stopped pretending. From that day on, I was no longer mom or grandma. I was a burden. Greg, my son-in-law, was the worst. He'd walk past me in the morning, see me sitting at the kitchen table with my Bible, and say, "Still not doing anything, Carol? The dishes from last night aren't going to wash themselves." Even though they were the ones who made the mess, Lily would just stand by, sipping her coffee, saying nothing. The worst of it, the cruelty that cut the deepest, was the food. About a week after the party, the 4 of them, Greg, Lily, and my granddaughters Jenny and Lisa, were in the living room. I heard Greg on the phone ordering Chinese food. My stomach rumbled. I hadn't had a proper meal in days. When the food arrived, they spread it all out on the coffee table and started eating right out of the cartons, laughing at something on TV. I waited in the kitchen, thinking they'd call me in. They never did. Finally, little Lisa, my sweet 8-year-old, came into the kitchen. Her face was full of confusion. "Grandma, why aren't you eating with us? There's so much." Before I could answer, Lily's voice, sharp as glass, came from the living room. "Lisa, get back in here and close the door. Grandma isn't hungry. She told me earlier she'd make herself some toast later." I had said no such thing. I was starving. Lisa looked at me, her eyes filling with tears. "But that's not fair." "Lisa, now!" Greg bellowed. She flinched, dropped her head, and shuffled back into the living room, closing the door behind her, shutting me out. I went to my room. I couldn't bear to smell the food I wasn't allowed to have. Later that night, There was a tiny knock on my door. It was Lisa, in her pajamas. She snuck in and pressed something small and sticky into my palm. It was a single, half-melted caramel chew. "I saved it for you from my school lunch, Grandma," she whispered, her eyes wide with the secrecy of it all. I told myself all the way home on the bus not to eat it. It was a big fight in my head. But I wanted you to have it. I hugged her so tight. I thought my heart would burst. She was the only piece of my old life, the only piece of goodness left in this cold, empty house. Her older sister, Jenny, she was another story. At 12, Jenny was already a perfect copy of her parents. She was sharp, calculating, and had a cruel streak that worried me. She saw my humiliation and seemed to approve of it. She'd roll her eyes when I entered a room or mutter, "Oh God, she's here again," just loud enough for me to hear. One afternoon, Jenny was tearing through the living room, late for her soccer practice. She slung her backpack over her shoulder, and it caught the edge of an expensive glass vase on the entryway table. It shattered on the hardwood floor. Greg came running from his office. "What in the world was that?" Jenny didn't miss a beat. She immediately pointed a finger at her little sister, who was quietly reading a book on the stairs. "Lisa did it. She was running and she knocked it over. She's so clumsy." "I did not," Lisa cried, her face crumbling in terror. "I was right here." "Greg, that's not true," I said, stepping out of the kitchen. My voice was shaking, but I had to speak. I saw the whole thing. Jenny's backpack hit it. It was an accident. Greg's head snapped toward me. His eyes were blazing. "Excuse me? Why are you meddling in this? And why are you lying to protect her?" "I'm not lying, Greg. I saw—" "You're calling my daughter a liar?" Lily yelled, coming down the stairs. "Mom, why do you always take Lisa's side?" Jenny said, "Lisa did it, so Lisa did it. End of story." "Lisa, you're grounded for a week. Go to your room. And you?" she said, turning to me. "Just stay out of it. This is our family. It has nothing to do with you." I was speechless. They punished my innocent granddaughter, and I was told I wasn't part of the family. I went back to my room and closed the door. This wasn't a home. It was a prison. This wasn't ignorance. It was a strategy. They weren't just being cruel. They were trying to erase me. I had given them every single thing I had. My home, my life savings, my dignity. And now they were making it clear I had no place here. I sat on my bed, and a cold, hard realization settled in my stomach. I thought back to that day in the lawyer's office, Lily rushing me, pointing where to sign. "This is our house, Mom." A terrible, sickening thought began to form in my mind. What if my name wasn't on the deed at all? What if that $80,000 wasn't an investment, but a gift? I suddenly realized I hadn't seen a single piece of mail addressed to me at this new house. Not a bank statement, not a utility bill, nothing. They thought I was a foolish, senile old woman. They thought they could banish me to my room and I would just fade away. They underestimated me. They had no idea who I really was. And they had no idea what I was about to do. The cold rage had settled in. The cold rice was eaten. The tears were dry. Now, all that was left was clarity. I was no longer a grieving mother. I was a woman who had been swindled, and I was not going to go down quietly. They thought I was weak. They thought I was senile. They believed that by humiliating me, by locking me away in my room, they would break me. They were wrong. Their cruelty had given me focus. I didn't need their love anymore. I needed justice. And for justice, I needed proof. I began to watch. I memorized their schedules. Greg and Lily left for work at 8:15 a.m. Always. The children left for school. I waited almost a week for the perfect opportunity. A Thursday morning. Greg was gone. The kids were on the bus. I heard Lily on the phone upstairs in her bedroom. "Yes, of course. I'll be right there. The traffic is just awful." She clattered down the stairs, keys jingling, and rushed out the front door, her half-eaten breakfast still on the counter. The house was silent. My heart hammered. This was it. I didn't go to Greg's office. Not first. First, I had to check my own arsenal. I had to see the papers that I knew I possessed. I hurried to my room. Under the bed, beneath my winter sweaters, was the small metal box labeled Important Papers. I pulled it out. It was dusty. I opened the lid. My heart sank. The thick, manila folder from the law office, the one with all the closing documents for the new house, was gone. I gasped, as if I'd been punched in the chest. I dumped the entire contents of the box onto my bed, desperately hoping it had just been misplaced. Papers scattered everywhere. Nothing. No deed. No closing statement. No mortgage application. They had come into my room. The thought made my skin crawl. They had come into my private space, gone through my things, and stolen my only proof. I sat on the floor, defeated. They had thought of everything. But, wait, as I started to put the other papers, my birth certificate, David's death certificate, back into the box, my fingers brushed against something thin, tucked into the faded silk lining of the lid itself, a place I had hidden my old checkbook register, separate from the main file. I pulled it out, and there it was, the carbon copy, the flimsy, blue-inked receipt from my old checkbook. I stared at it, my hands shaking. It was the transfer for the $30,000, my entire life savings. On the memo line, in my own shaky handwriting, I had written 2 words, house payment, but at the bottom, in the bank's official impersonal print, were the words that stopped my breath. Transfer to Lily M. Johnson, transaction type, personal gift. A gift. I had it. This was it. This was the proof of the con. They hadn't just told me it was a gift. They had papered it as a gift from the very beginning, counting on me never to look. And then they stole the rest of the file to hide the deed from me. A new surge of adrenaline, cold and pure, went through me. They had stolen the file, but they had missed this. This one tiny piece of paper proved their intent to defraud me. Now I knew what they were hiding. I had to see the deed. I ran to Greg's office. This was my last hope. I put my hand on the doorknob and turned. It was locked tight, solid as a rock. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door. They had thought of everything, almost. They stole my proof, and they locked up their proof. I shuffled back to my room, but I was no longer defeated. I clutched the bank receipt in my hand. I was no longer a victim. I was a woman with evidence. I had lost the battle for the files, but I had won the first piece of the war. I tucked the receipt into my Bible, the one place I knew they would never, ever look. I now had one small, damning piece of paper, but I knew it wasn't enough. They had locked the door. I was at a stalemate. I needed more. I needed their files, not just mine. And for that, I would have to wait. I had the bank receipt, that one tiny scrap of paper, tucked inside my Bible, but I knew it wasn't enough. It proved my intent, but it didn't prove their crime. I prayed for an opportunity, a mistake, a single moment of carelessness on their part. That moment came on a Saturday morning. I woke up to the sound of unusual chaos. Greg was yelling from downstairs, "Jenny, where are your sneakers? We're going to be late." Lily was running around the kitchen, packing a wicker basket. The whole house smelled like sunscreen and sandwiches. "Mom, we're going on a picnic," Lily announced, not looking at me. I had drifted into the kitchen, invisible as always. "A family day. We're driving out to the lake. We'll be gone all day. Probably not back until after dark." She finally looked at me, her eyes flat. "Just don't make a mess." The 4 of them, Greg, Lily, Jenny, and little Lisa, clattered out the front door in a storm of noise, arguing and laughing. The door slammed, the car started, and they were gone. The house was suddenly completely silent. I waited 10 minutes, my heart pounding. I walked slowly to the front entryway, And then I saw it. My breath caught in my throat. They had been in such a hurry, so full of their own plans, so arrogant, that they had forgotten. On the little table by the door, where Greg always tossed his wallet, lay two items: Lily's smartphone and a single, small, brass key. The key to Greg's office. They had forgotten everything. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely pick them up. This was it. This was the line. For 69 years, I had lived my life by the good book. I had never invaded anyone's privacy. But as I stood there, clutching the phone and the key, I thought of the $80,000. I thought of the stolen file. I thought of the personal gift receipt in my Bible. This wasn't snooping. This was an investigation. This was survival. I took the items to my room and locked the door. I sat on my bed, starting with the phone. The screen was black. I pressed the side button. It lit up, asking for a 4-digit passcode. I was stuck. I tried to guess. Her birthday? 0312. Access denied. Greg's birthday? Access denied. Lisa's birthday? 1008. Access denied. Try again in 1 minute. I set the phone down, my mind racing. What could it be? And then I remembered. About a month ago, I had been outside Greg's office, dusting. The door was ajar. I heard him snap at Lily. "For God's sake, Lily, stop forgetting the code. It's not complicated. It's the most important date of our new life. It's the day we closed on this place, the day they closed on the house." I remembered that day. It was in the fall, just before Halloween. October 25th. I picked up the phone. The 1-minute wait was over. My fingers trembled. 1, 0, 2, 5. The phone clicked. It opened. I felt a dizzying rush of guilt and power. I opened her text messages. My eyes scanned the list of names: friends, her sister-in-law, a spa, and then one I didn't recognize: Lawyer Stevens. My blood ran cold. I opened the thread. I had to read it 3 times to believe what I was seeing. The messages went back weeks. Lily, just checking in. Is the buyer for Willow Creek finalized? We need this done as soon as possible. Lawyer Stevens. Paperwork is moving. As we discussed, since your mother waived all interest, the gift document, the sale is clean. You just need to handle the logistics of her relocation. Her relocation. He meant me. Lily, what's the timeline? I need her out before the closing. It's getting complicated here. Lawyer Stevens. We can close in 30 days. The market is hot. You'll have your money, and you'll be free. And then, the last message. The one that shattered the final piece of my heart. Lily. Thank God. I can't wait to sell this place and finally be rid of this problem. A problem. I wasn't a mother. I was a problem to be rid of. They weren't just kicking me out. They weren't just ignoring me. They were actively, secretly, selling the house, my house, out from under me to get rid of me and cash in. I was shaking now, not with fear, but with a terrible, righteous fury. I had the digital proof, but I needed the physical proof. I took the small brass key. I walked to Greg's office. I put the key in the lock. It turned smoothly. I opened the door. I went straight to the filing cabinet. Property. I pulled open the drawer. 1 ABC Willow Creek. I pulled the file. And there it was. Not just the deed with their names on it. Not just the waiver of financial interest that I had supposedly signed. There was a new folder. Inside it was a signed sales agreement. They had already sold the house. The closing was in 3 weeks. They were going to take the money, and I would be homeless. I pulled out my old flip phone from my apron pocket. The camera was terrible, but it would work. I laid the documents on the floor, one by one. I took a picture of the deed, a picture of the waiver, a picture of the new sales agreement. Then, I went back to Lily's phone. I took a picture of her text messages with the lawyer. I had it. I had it all. The motive, the con, the betrayal, and the final, cruel plan. I carefully put the file back in the cabinet. I locked the office door. I placed the key and the phone exactly where I had found them. I went back to my room, sat on my bed, and for the first time in my life, I prayed. Not for forgiveness. I prayed for strength, because the war had just begun. I had the evidence, the grainy photographs on my old flip phone, and the single, precious bank receipt tucked inside the cover of my Bible. I knew the final confrontation was coming. Lily's texts said the closing was in 30 days. I didn't have 30 days. I had to assume I had no time at all. I was terrified. I was a 69-year-old woman with no money, no allies, and proof of a crime that was so monstrous, I worried no one would believe me. It's showtime, the knock came. It was hard, official. I opened the door. Lily and Greg were standing there, dressed up, with Greg holding a thick, manila envelope. Mom, we need to talk, Lily said, pushing past me into the room. We've sold the house, Mom, Greg said, his voice laced with that false, pitying tone. The new owners are lovely. They're closing in 2 days, and they're very eager to move in. I played the part. I stumbled back and sat on my bed, my hand flying to my chest. Sold? Sold? But this is my house, too. You can't. What about my $80,000? Lily. You promised my name was on the deed. Lily sighed, a long, exasperated sound. Mom, we've been over this. Your money was a gift. A very generous gift, but a gift nonetheless. You signed the papers. I don't remember signing any papers like that, I whispered. Well, you did, Greg said. He pulled a copy of the waiver from the envelope and held it out. See? Right there, waiver of financial interest, it's all legal. So, what happens to me? I asked, letting the tears well in my eyes. Well, that's the other thing, Lily said, her voice softening. You can't stay here, obviously, but we've made arrangements for you. We weren't just going to throw you out on the street. Arrangements? We've found a very nice place for you, she continued. A state-run home, Street Jude's. It's clean, and they have nurses. It's the rear location we talked about. The word relocation from her text messages. The final humiliation. They were going to take my money, sell my house, and then lock me away in a state-run facility to be forgotten. A home? I cried, standing up. A home? Lily, you can't do this to me. I am your mother. I raised you. You can't just throw me away. Greg stepped in front of Lily, his face hardening. That's enough, Carol. It's done. A car is coming to pick you up in 1 hour. You need to pack a bag. 1 hour? I gasped. No, please. Lily, don't let him do this. I looked at my daughter, my only child. I begged her with my eyes. One last chance to be a human being. She looked away. I'll go wait in the car, she muttered. Just get her ready. She fled the room, leaving her husband to do her dirty work. My tears stopped. Instantly. The show was over. I turned to my suitcase and calmly packed my few items of clothing. I packed my toothbrush. Then, I picked up my heavy, leather-bound Bible from the nightstand. I slid my old flip phone and the bank receipt deep inside the pages. What are you doing? Greg snapped, impatient. Just get your things. The van will be here any minute. I zipped the suitcase and stood up, clutching the Bible to my chest. I looked him dead in the eye. I won't be needing the van. He actually laughed. What? Don't be stupid, old woman. You have nowhere else to go. You're going to Street Jude's. That's the plan. That's your plan, I said, my voice as cold as his. It's not mine. I am not going to your nursing home. I walked past him, out of the room, and down the stairs. He and Lily were both standing by the front door, their faces a mask of confusion and anger. Mom, what is this? Lily demanded. Stop making a scene. The van from Street Jude's is on its way. You are going." "No," I said. Lily's face turned ugly. She looked at the Bible in my arms, and her patience finally snapped. The fake, concerned daughter disappeared, and the monster I'd seen in the text messages was finally here. "Oh my God, stop being so dramatic with that book," she shrieked, pointing at it. "Are you going to pray your way out of this? At least you have somewhere to go pray, right? Honestly." She took a breath. Her eyes filled with pure disgust and spat the words that sealed her fate. "Mom, you should be grateful we're even letting you take your Bible." I looked at her. I looked at the daughter I had raised, the woman who had stolen my life, and I smiled, a small, cold smile. "Oh, I am grateful, Lily," I said. "I am so, so grateful. Because it's the one thing in this entire house you never thought to look inside." I opened the front door. Just as Sister Agnes had promised, a simple black sedan was waiting at the curb. Not a van from Street Jude's, a car from St. Mary's. I picked up my suitcase and walked down the path. Lily and Greg just stood there on the porch, their mouths open. Their problem was not being relocated. It was walking away. I got in the car, closed the door, and didn't look back. The truth was, I had already left that house long before they asked me to pack. It happened 2 weeks after the picnic. For a week, I lived a double life. By day, I was the invisible old woman, the ghost they had created. I ate my toast, I stayed in my room, and I made myself as small as possible. But by night, I was a soldier preparing for war. I charged my phone in the bathroom outlet, terrified they'd notice. I reread the bank receipt until the ink was practically imprinted on my memory. Personal gift. I let the words fuel me. I knew, from Lily's text messages, that the closing date for the sale of the house was approaching. They had 30 days. Time was running out. I was waiting for them to make the final move, to tell me about my relocation. I sat in my room, clutching my Bible, and my hands fell upon the inside cover where I had written a phone number years ago, St. Mary's Convent. I had known Sister Agnes for 20 years. We had run bake sales together. She had prayed with me when David died. She was a kind woman, but she was not soft. She was strong, like tempered steel. My hands were shaking as I dialed. "Sister?" I whispered. "It's Carol Thompson. I'm in terrible trouble." I told her everything. The $80,000, the stolen file, the personal gift, the secret plan to sell the house, the photographs on my phone. There was a long silence on the line. When she finally spoke, her voice was not the gentle coo of a nun. It was the sharp command of a general. "Carol," she said, her voice hard as iron, "this is not trouble. This is evil. And we do not bow to evil. You are not alone. When they come for you, you will have a place to go. We have a small room in the convent basement. It's warm and it's safe. Do not let them take you anywhere else. Do you understand me?" "Yes," I whispered, a single tear of relief rolling down my cheek. "And, Carol," she added, "get a lawyer. We have one who works for the parish. His name is Brian. The moment you are safe, you call him." I hung up the phone. I had a plan. I had an ally. I had a safe house. I was no longer a victim. I was just waiting for the enemy to make their move. The convent room was small, perhaps 10 feet by 10 feet, with concrete walls and a single high window. But it was a fortress. It was the safest I had felt in months. Sister Agnes entered quietly, the smell of soap and soup following her. She set down a bowl of thick vegetable stew, a slice of bread beside it, and looked at me with eyes that had seen too much and forgiven even more. "Eat, Carol," she said. "You're safe now. God hasn't left you, even if your child has." The next morning, at Sister Agnes's arrangement, I called Brian O'Malley. He was the parish lawyer. When I arrived at his office, he didn't look like a lawyer. He looked like a tired boxer, with a shock of red hair, a rumpled suit, and eyes that saw everything. We didn't small talk. "Sister Agnes said you have trouble," he said. I didn't tell. I showed. First, the bank receipt from my Bible. Personal gift, he read aloud, a grim, cold smile touching his lips, arrogant and stupid. My favorite combination. What else? I gave him the old flip phone. He scrolled through the pictures, the deed, the waiver, the new sales agreement, and finally, the text messages. He read Lily's words. Be rid of this problem. He snapped the phone shut. He looked at me, his tired eyes now blazing. This is not a family dispute, Mrs. Thompson, he growled. This is elder fraud. This is conspiracy. This is theft. And they were so arrogant, they put it all in writing. They've handed us their own heads on a platter. Can you stop the sale? I whispered. It closes in 2 days. Brian picked up his own phone. I'm not going to stop it. I'm going to freeze it. I'm filing an emergency lis pendens and a fraud injunction with the court right now. That house is going nowhere. And I am suing Lily and Gregory Johnson for fraud. We'll get your money back, Carol. Every single cent. I returned to the convent, my entire body shaking with relief. Brian called at the end of the day. It's done, he said. The house is frozen. They've been served. What now? I asked. Now, he said. We wait for the explosion. The explosion didn't take long. And it wasn't a phone call. It was worse. That evening, I was in the quiet convent dining room when Sister Agnes rushed in, her face grim. Carol, your daughter is here. In the main chapel. She is making a scene. My heart hammered. I walked across the cold courtyard and pushed open the heavy oak doors of the church. Lily was standing there, in front of the altar. Greg was behind her, looking pale. But Lily, she wasn't crying. Her face was a furious, blotchy red. You! She shrieked, her voice echoing in the sacred space. You dare? You dare do this to me? Do what, Lily? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. Ask for my own money back? You've ruined me, she screamed, taking a step toward me. The lawyers are calling. The buyers are suing us. The bank is threatening foreclosure. You've destroyed us. For what? A little bit of stupid money. $80,000 is not a little bit of money, Lily. It was my entire life. It was a gift, she spat. You gave it to us. You're old and you changed your mind. You're trying to ruin my life. Greg stepped forward. Listen, Carol, let's be reasonable. Our lawyer says we can make a settlement. $30,000. Take the $30,000 and drop the suit. It's all over. They still thought they could buy me. They still thought I was for sale. I looked straight at my daughter. No, the silence was absolute. Lily's face twisted. The panic was gone, and something purely, darkly venomous took its place. No? She whispered, her voice dripping with spite. You think you're who, exactly? Sitting here in this basement with these penguins, thinking you have any power? She stalked toward me until she was inches from my face. I could smell the expensive perfume on her. You are pathetic, she hissed. A pathetic, jealous old woman. That's what this is. You're jealous of me, jealous of Greg. You couldn't stand seeing me have a life you never had. Lily. I started, but she cut me off. That $30,000 offer? It's gone. You hear me? My lawyer is calling your little ambulance chaser in the morning. We're not giving you 1 cent. This isn't a negotiation, Lily. It's a lawsuit. Oh, you'll get a lawsuit, she snarled, spittle flying from her mouth. I will fight you. I will drag this out for years. I will tell the court you are senile, that you are crazy, that you were abusive. I will spend every cent of your own money to make sure you die in that basement, clutching that stupid Bible. You will get nothing. She stared at me for 1 more second, breathing hard. Then she spun on her heel and stormed out of the chapel. The heavy door slammed shut, the sound echoing like a gunshot. I stood there, trembling. Sister Agnes put a hand on my shoulder. The mask has well and truly fallen, my child. I knew she was right. This wasn't about money anymore. My daughter had just declared war, and I had no idea she was about to use my innocent granddaughter as her first soldier. Life in the convent was a return to silence. The days were marked by bells, morning prayer, midday meal, evening vespers. It had been 3 weeks since Lily's explosion in the chapel. 3 weeks of total, agonizing silence from the outside world. I spent my days helping Sister Agnes in the kitchen. My hands, which had once tended roses and baked birthday cakes for my family, were now kneading dough for the church's soup kitchen. The rhythmic, repetitive work was a comfort. It kept my mind from spinning into the dark. "They are panicking, Carol," Brian O'Malley had told me on our last phone call. His voice was the only anchor I had to the world beyond these walls. "I've just received a furious letter from their lawyer. The injunction is holding. The house sale is dead. The buyers are suing them for breach of contract. Their credit is frozen. Right now, they are trapped in the prison they built." "So, what happens now?" I had asked. "Now they get desperate," he said. "A cornered animal is a dangerous one. They've tried threats, and that failed. Now they'll try something else. Just be ready." I thought I was ready. I was not. The knock came on a cold, gray afternoon at the end of October. The air smelled like rain and dying leaves. Sister Agnes came to my small room, her face troubled, which was unusual for her. "Carol," she said, her voice low, "you have a visitor." "A visitor?" My heart hammered. "Brian?" "No," she said, and her eyes were full of a pity that scared me. "It's a child. It's your granddaughter, Lisa." It felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. Lisa. In all these weeks, the sharpest pain, sharper than the anger, had been the loss of my grandchildren. I had nightmares of them forgetting me, of Jenny growing up to be just like her mother, and Lisa. Sweet, kind Lisa, who gave me her last piece of candy. I ran. I hurried down the cold hallway, my old knees aching, my heart pounding in my throat. I pushed open the heavy parlor door, and there she was. She was standing by the tall, stained glass window, still in her green and plaid school uniform, her little backpack at her feet. She looked so small, so impossibly out of place against the dark, imposing wood and the stern portraits of long-dead bishops. "Lisa?" I whispered. Her head snapped up. "Grandma!" She ran across the room and slammed into my legs, her arms wrapping around my waist, her face buried in my apron. I collapsed onto the wooden bench, pulling her into my lap, my entire body shaking. I buried my face in her hair. It smelled like apples and playground dirt. Oh, God. I had missed her. I held her and just wept, the hot, silent tears I hadn't let myself cry in weeks. "Grandma," she whispered, her voice muffled against my shoulder. "I missed you so much. Why did you leave? Mom said you were sick, but you're not sick." I pulled back, wiping my face, my hands cupping her small, precious cheeks. "Oh, baby, I'm not sick. I had to go away for a little while. Mom said you were dangerous," she whispered, her eyes wide with a secret. The word hit me like a physical blow. Dangerous. That's what they were telling my grandchildren. "Honey, who brought you here?" I asked, my blood turning to ice. "Mom did," she said, pointing to the window. I looked. Through the stained glass, I could see it. Lily's black SUV. It was parked across the street, idling, half hidden by a large oak tree. She was out there, waiting. She hadn't come in. She hadn't faced me. She had sent her 8-year-old daughter into a convent alone to do her dirty work. My God, there was no bottom. "Lisa, what did your mother tell you to do?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, trying not to let the rage I felt poison this moment with her. "She told me to give you this," Lisa said. She reached into her backpack and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It wasn't a court document. It was a bright orange, store-bought invitation, covered in glittery drawings of pumpkins and ghosts. "It's for Halloween," she said, her face lighting up with an excitement that was heartbreakingly genuine. "We're having a big party, Grandma. A really big one. And Mom said, she said to invite you." I unfolded the card. At the top, in Lily's loopy, insincere handwriting, were the words, "A night of forgiveness. A night of forgiveness?" I read aloud. "Uh-huh," Lisa beamed. "Mom says it's a we're conciliation party." She struggled with the big word. She says she was very, very bad, and she's sorry. And she wants to say she's sorry in front of everyone at the party. She told me to tell you that she misses you. And I miss you, Grandma. I miss you so much. Please come. Please?" Her bottom lip trembled. She was begging. Not for a party, but for her family. I held the glittery orange invitation in my hand. A public apology. A reconciliation. After screaming at me in a church. After threatening to let me die in a basement. After stealing $80,000. Lily wasn't sorry. She was cornered. This wasn't an invitation. It was a trap. It was the something else Brian had warned me about. She had tried threats, and they had failed. Now, she was using her own daughter's love as a weapon, a shield, a tool. She was going to try to shame me into submission. I looked down at Lisa's hopeful, innocent face. She didn't know she was a pawn. She just wanted her grandma. I couldn't say no to her. And more than that, I couldn't say no to the opportunity. A public performance? She wanted to put on a show? Fine. I would be her audience. This wasn't a party. It was the next move on the chessboard. And I needed to see the board. I smoothed her hair. "Of course, baby," I said, forcing a smile. "Of course I'll come." She let out a squeal of joy and hugged me again. "Go on," I said, my voice gentle. "Go tell your mother I said yes." She ran out of the parlor, her backpack thumping against her. I watched her run across the courtyard, a little girl in a plaid skirt, carrying a message of peace back to a woman who only understood war. Life in the convent was a return to silence. The days were marked by bells, morning prayer, midday meal, evening vespers. It had been 3 weeks since Lily's explosion in the chapel, 3 weeks of total, agonizing silence from the outside world. I spent my days helping Sister Agnes in the kitchen. My hands, which had once tended roses and baked birthday cakes for my family, were now kneading dough for the church's soup kitchen. The rhythmic, repetitive work was a comfort. It kept my mind from spinning into the dark. "They are panicking, Carol," Brian O'Malley had told me on our last phone call. His voice was the only anchor I had to the world beyond these walls. "I've just received a furious letter from their lawyer. The injunction is holding. The house sale is dead. The buyers are suing them for breach of contract. Their credit is frozen. Right now, they are trapped in the prison they built." "So what happens now?" I had asked. "Now, they get desperate," he said. "A cornered animal is a dangerous one. They've tried threats, and that failed. Now, they'll try something else. Just be ready." I thought I was ready. I was not. The knock came on a cold, gray afternoon at the end of October. The air smelled like rain and dying leaves. Sister Agnes came to my small room, her face troubled, which was unusual for her. "Carol," she said, her voice low, "you have a visitor." In the parlor. "A visitor?" My heart hammered. "Brian?" "No," she said, and her eyes were full of a pity that scared me. "It's a child. It's your granddaughter, Lisa." It felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. Lisa. In all these weeks, the sharpest pain, sharper than the anger, had been the loss of my grandchildren. I had nightmares of them forgetting me, of Jenny growing up to be just like her mother. And Lisa, sweet, kind Lisa, who gave me her last piece of candy. I ran. I hurried down the cold hallway, my old knees aching, my heart pounding in my throat. I pushed open the heavy parlor door, and there she was. She was standing by the tall, stained glass window, still in her green and plaid school uniform, her little backpack at her feet. She looked so small, so impossibly out of place against the dark, imposing wood and the stern portraits of long-dead bishops. "Lisa?" I whispered. Her head snapped up. "Grandma!" She ran across the room and slammed into my legs, her arms wrapping around my waist, her face buried in my apron. I collapsed onto the wooden bench, pulling her into my lap, my entire body shaking. I buried my face in her hair. It smelled like apples and playground dirt. Oh, God! I had missed her. I held her and just wept, the hot, silent tears I hadn't let myself cry in weeks. "Grandma!" she whispered, her voice muffled against my shoulder. "I missed you so much. Why did you leave? Mom said you were sick, but you're not sick." I pulled back, wiping my face, my hands cupping her small, precious cheeks. "Oh, baby, I'm not sick. I had to go away for a little while. Mom said you were dangerous," she whispered, her eyes wide with a secret. The word hit me like a physical blow. Dangerous. That's what they were telling my grandchildren. "Honey, who brought you here?" I asked, my blood turning to ice. "Mom did," she said, pointing to the window. I looked. Through the stained glass, I could see it. Lily's black SUV. It was parked across the street, idling, half hidden by a large oak tree. She was out there, waiting. She hadn't come in. She hadn't faced me. She had sent her 8-year-old daughter into a convent alone to do her dirty work. My God. There was no bottom. "Lisa, what did your mother tell you to do?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, trying not to let the rage I felt poison this moment with her. "She told me to give you this," Lisa said. She reached into her backpack and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It wasn't a court document. It was a bright orange, store-bought invitation, covered in glittery drawings of pumpkins and ghosts. "It's for Halloween," she said, her face lighting up with an excitement that was heartbreakingly genuine. "We're having a big party, Grandma, a really big one." And Mom said, "She said to invite you." I unfolded the card. At the top, in Lily's loopy, insincere handwriting, were the words, "A night of forgiveness." A night of forgiveness? I read aloud. "Uh-huh," Lisa beamed. "Mom says it's a reconcili Atian party." She struggled with the big word. She says she was very, very bad, and she's sorry. And she wants to say she's sorry in front of everyone at the party. She told me to tell you that she misses you. And I miss you, Grandma. I miss you so much. Please come. Please?" Her bottom lip trembled. She was begging. Not for a party, but for her family. I held the glittery orange invitation in my hand. A public apology. A reconciliation. After screaming at me in a church. After threatening to let me die in a basement. After stealing $80,000, Lily wasn't sorry. She was cornered. This wasn't an invitation. It was a trap. It was the something else Brian had warned me about. She had tried threats, and they had failed. Now, she was using her own daughter's love as a weapon, a shield, a tool. She was going to try to shame me into submission. I looked down at Lisa's hopeful, innocent face. She didn't know she was a pawn. She just wanted her grandma. I couldn't say no to her. And more than that, I couldn't say no to the opportunity. A public performance? She wanted to put on a show? Fine. I would be her audience. This wasn't a party. It was the next move on the chessboard. And I needed to see the board. I smoothed her hair. "Of course, baby," I said, forcing a smile. "Of course. I'll come." She let out a squeal of joy and hugged me again. "Go on," I said, my voice gentle. "Go tell your mother I said yes." She ran out of the parlor, her backpack thumping against her. I watched her run across the courtyard, a little girl in a plaid skirt, carrying a message of peace back to a woman who only understood war. The silence in the house was heavy, broken only by the sound of Greg unfastening the top button of his shirt. The performance was over. The guests were gone. The hired cameramen had packed their lights and left. It was just the three of us. Lily let out a long, ragged breath, not of sadness, but of pure exhaustion. She walked over to the minibar, poured a large glass of brandy, and drank half of it in one gulp. "Well," she said, her voice no longer soft and tearful, but a low, ragged rasp. "That's done." She turned to me, and the angelic, forgiving daughter was gone. In her place was a boardroom executioner. "So, Mom," she said, "you'll be calling your little lawyer, Brian, in the morning. You will tell him you've had a change of heart. You will tell him you were confused, just like we said, and that you are dropping the lawsuit. Immediately." I just looked at her. I didn't say anything. I was playing the part of the broken woman. I let my shoulders slump. I let my eyes look empty. "Did you hear me?" Greg snapped. He was standing by the fireplace, loosening his tie. She said, "You're calling it off. That was the deal. You got your little party. Everyone saw us. Reconcile. Now you do your part." I don't know," I whispered, clutching my hands in my lap. "Brian." He was very firm. Lily laughed. It was a sound like broken glass. "Oh, Brian." "Yes?" "Your lawyer. You think he matters? You think any of this matters?" "Mom, you have nothing." She stalked across the room and stood over me, her shadow falling across my lap. She was energized by the brandy, by the success of her performance. "You have a bank receipt?" She sneered, as if she could read my mind. "You have some blurry photos from a flip phone? Who cares? We have a signed, notarized document. A waiver. You signed it. You know, the law. That's what a judge cares about, not the ramblings of a senile old woman." "It was a trick," I whispered, letting my lip tremble. "You tricked me. That wasn't a gift. It was my life." "Oh, for God's sake, of course we tricked you," Greg burst out. He was angry that I was even questioning this. "What did you think? We were going to just let you sit on that money until you died? Let you sit on that house? It was a waste." "Greg." "Shut up," Lily said, holding up a hand. But she was smiling. The confession was out. The truth was finally, horribly, in the air. "No, I won't shut up," he said, walking toward me. He was emboldened, seeing me so small and defeated. "She needs to understand the reality here. Yes, Carol, we tricked you. We needed that 80,000 to secure our future, not to have it rot in your bank account. And we did what was necessary. We made you sign the waiver. We took the file from your room. We planned it, and we did it perfectly. And you thought you could fight us?" Lily said, kneeling in front of me, her voice a poisonous conspiratorial whisper. "You thought your little lawyer could win? You have no idea the kind of debt we're in. You think we're going to let our lives be ruined? By you? You have one move, Mom. One. You call Brian, you drop the suit, and you apologize for the confusion. We let you live here, quietly, in your room, until this all blows over. And if I don't?" I asked, my voice barely audible. Greg and Lily looked at each other, and they smiled. It was the same cold, reptilian smile. "Then we do what we should have done in the first place," Greg said. "We won't just tell the court you're senile, Mom," Lily finished, her voice terrifyingly sweet. "We'll have you committed. We'll get power of attorney. We'll find a nice, state-run facility, and we'll stick you in it. We'll take your phone, we'll take your Bible, and you will never see Lisa again. You will be a non-person, just a problem that we finally got rid of." The threat hung in the air, absolute and final. They had confessed everything. They had admitted to the fraud, the theft, the conspiracy, and they had laid out my future. Total annihilation. I stood up, my old bones aching. They flinched, surprised by the sudden movement. I looked at my daughter. I looked at the man she had become. I had all the confession I needed. I had heard the true heart of my child. But it was my word as a confused, senile old woman against theirs. And they were right. It wasn't enough. "I have to go," I whispered. I'm tired." Lily's face tightened. "You're not going anywhere. You're going to your room. And in the morning, you're making that call. No, I said, walking toward the front door. I'm going back to the convent. Like hell you are, Greg roared, moving to block the door. Let her go, Lily snapped, her voice sharp and calculating. Let her run back to the Penguins. She's scared. She's broken. She'll make the call in the morning. She has no other choice. Greg stepped aside, his face a mask of contempt. I opened the front door. The cold night air hit my face. I walked out, not looking back. Brian's car was waiting at the curb, just as he'd promised. I got in the car. He didn't say anything, just pulled away from the curb. I watched the house, my house, blazing with the party's leftover lights, get smaller and smaller until it disappeared. Carol? Brian said gently, his eyes on the road. What happened in there? I turned to him, the tears I couldn't shed in front of them now, streaming down my face. They admitted it. Brian, I choked out. They admitted everything. The waiver, the theft, the plan. They laughed about it. That's good, he said, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. That's wonderful. No, I cried, the full weight of my despair hitting me. No, you don't understand. The cameras were gone. The guests were gone. It's just my word against theirs. They told me. They told me they'd have me committed, that I'd never see Lisa again. Brian, they're right. We have no proof. We have nothing. I sat in the convent parlor, a cup of lukewarm tea shaking in my hands. It had been 2 days since the party. 2 days since Brian O'Malley had burst through the door. 2 days since I had seen the look of pure, murderous rage in Greg's eyes, and the cold, twisted smile on my daughter's face as she watched him. The terror of that moment hadn't left me. I slept with my door wedged shut with a chair. Every time a car door slammed in the street, I jumped. That afternoon, I went to the convent's small library. It was my only escape. It had one old, donated desktop computer in the corner, one that Sister Agnes used for parish newsletters. I sat down, just to feel connected to the world, and opened my old, free email account. It was something I rarely used, mostly for coupons and prayer newsletters. But there was a new message. It wasn't a coupon. The sender's address was just a jumble of letters and numbers. The subject line was 3 words. The party. Read this. My heart stopped. My hands, cold and trembling, moved the mouse. I clicked it open. The email was short. I was one of the cameramen you hired for the Halloween party. Your daughter and her husband were unprofessional and rude to my crew all night. But what they did to you, that was something else. They had us set up for a test shoot in the dining room before you arrived. They were talking. They didn't know one of my audio feeds was live and recording. I think the person who actually paid the bills for that house should have it. A friend. Below the text was a single blue link. A Google Drive file. I fumbled with the mouse. I clicked the link. A black screen opened, and then a video started to play. It wasn't a video of the party. It was before the party. It was a shot of the dining room. The camera was hidden on a bookshelf, aimed at the archway where the forgiveness banner was being hung. Lily walked into the frame, holding a glass of champagne. She was already in her cashmere dress. Greg was with her, fixing his tie. Okay. Is the audio good? Lily said to someone off camera. A muffled voice, the cameraman, said, Yes, ma'am. We're rolling. Good, Lily said. She took a sip of her champagne and looked at Greg. Now, remember, when she gets here, you let me do the crying. I'll hug her. I'll talk about her confusion. The key is to make us look like saints. We're the loving children suffering through her. Episode. Greg scoffed. Why are we even bothering with this? We should have just called the police and had her dragged to Street Jude's like we planned. Because? You idiot, Lily snapped. That's messy. That leads to court dates and investigations. This way, we control the story. We film her forgiving us. We film us forgiving her. We create a public record. If she tries to fight, we show this video. We paint her as a loving mother who just got confused again. It neutralizes her. She turned, looking right into the hidden camera, though she didn't know it. Her eyes were cold, bright, and utterly devoid of love. We just have to make her look kind, but simple. She smiled. Make her look soft and just a little bit dumb. People have to believe we're the victims here. This whole night is about making us the victims. The video ended. I sat there, frozen. The blood had drained from my face. I could hear my own pulse thundering in my ears. It was one thing to know they were liars. It was another to watch them rehearse it. To hear my own daughter, in her own voice, plot to frame me as a confused, simple, dumb old woman. Make us the victims. I took a deep, shuddering breath. I clicked forward, and then I called his office. "Brian," I said, my voice no longer a whisper. It was the coldest, steadiest sound I had ever heard myself make. "It's Carol. The miracle just arrived. Check your email." The day of the trial, the courtroom was packed. The press had smelled blood. A widowed mother suing her only child. It was the kind of tragedy people love to watch. I sat there, my hands gripping my Bible. Across the aisle, Lily sat, and she was a work of art. She wore a simple, high-necked black dress, no makeup, her face pale. In her hands, she clutched a string of pearl rosary beads. She looked like a martyr, and when she took the stand, her performance began. Mrs. Johnson, her lawyer, Sharp, said in a sympathetic voice, "Please, tell the court what happened." Lily dissolved, not in loud, ugly sobs, but in quiet, perfect, painful tears that streamed down her face. I just love my mommy," she choked out, her voice breaking perfectly. "After Daddy died, she wasn't herself. She got confused and angry. She spun a beautiful, poisonous lie. How I had insisted on giving her the money as a gift. How I had begged her to let me sign papers I wouldn't even read. And then," she said, "that lawyer." She glanced at Brian. He started calling her. He took advantage of her confusion. He convinced my mother she'd been robbed. He turned her against us. He destroyed our family. She collapsed in on herself, shoulders shaking. That night of forgiveness, that was me, trying to forgive her for suing me. I just wanted my mommy back. The room was dead silent. The jury was looking at her with total compassion. Even the judge seemed moved. Greg, in the front row, nodded mournfully. They had won. I had lost. They had painted me as a wicked, senile, old woman. Brian O'Malley stood up. He didn't look at Lily. He looked at his papers. "Mrs. Johnson," he said, his voice flat. A moving performance. "Objection!" Sharp yelled. "Withdrawn," Brian said. "Mrs. Johnson, you just swore that the party was a sincere attempt to forgive your mother?" "Yes," Lily whispered, clutching the rosary. "With all my heart. Did you, or did you not, state that you wanted to make your mother, in your words, look kind, but simple? Did you state that you wanted to make her look soft and just a little bit dumb?" Lily's face froze. The color drained from her cheeks. I would never say such horrible things. Did you state people have to believe we're the victims here? No. This is harassment. He's making this up," Lily cried, looking to the judge. "Making it up?" Brian asked, finally looking up at her, his eyes like ice. "Then, Mrs. Johnson, is this your voice?" He turned to the court technician. "Your Honor, the prosecution would like to submit evidence Exhibit 10, a video file titled Test Shoot." Sharp leaped to his feet. "Objection! This evidence is unverified. It's illegally obtained." "It has been verified, Counselor," the judge said, looking over her glasses. "And it was sent from one of your own client's vendors. I'll allow it." Lily's face was no longer white. It was a chalky, sick gray. Greg looked like he was going to be physically ill. The large monitor on the wall flickered to life. The dining room. Lily, in her cashmere dress, holding her champagne flute. And then, her voice. Clear, cold, and arrogant. We just have to make her look kind, but simple. A gasp went through the courtroom. Make her look soft and just a little bit dumb. The video, Lily continued. People have to believe we're the victims here. The entire jury turned as one to stare at Lily. The reporters were writing so fast, their pens were blurring. Lily was staring at the screen, her mouth open in a silent scream. The rosary beads slipped from her nerveless fingers and clattered, dryly, onto the wooden floor. Brian let the silence hang for one more second. He had the video turned off. He turned back to Lily, who was trembling, totally exposed. Mrs. Johnson, he said, his voice quiet, but deadly. Would you please repeat for the court how you just wanted your mommy back? Lily didn't say anything. She just made a high, choking sound. No further questions, Your Honor. She drove me to it, Lily suddenly shrieked, the sound tearing through the courtroom. She shot to her feet, pointing at me. She wouldn't let go. She was always there, with her sad eyes and her poverty. She deserved it. She owed me. That is enough, the judge roared, slamming her gavel down. The sound cracked through the room. Mrs. Johnson, sit down! Sit down! Bailiff! Greg finally leaped up and grabbed his wife's arm, pulling her back into the chair, where she finally collapsed, not into tears, but into a low, horrifying, keening wail. The judge looked at the jury, but it was just a formality. She looked at Brian. She looked at me. We will take a 1-hour recess for the jury to deliberate, she said. The jury was back in 10 minutes. We all stood. My heart was in my throat. I clutched the wooden rail in front of me. In the matter of Thompson versus Johnson & Johnson, the jury forewoman, a stern-looking woman who hadn't taken her eyes off Lily, said, "On the charge of fraud, we find for the plaintiff." I let out a breath I didn't even know I was holding. "On the charge of conspiracy, we find for the plaintiff." Brian put his hand on my arm, his grip firm. "On the charge of financial elder abuse, we find for the plaintiff." A choked sob came from Lily's side of the room. We sat. The judge put her glasses on and looked down at Lily and Greg, her face a mask of utter contempt. "Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, what I have seen today is one of the most disgusting and calculated acts of family betrayal this court has ever witnessed. You did not just steal money. You preyed on the most sacred trust that exists, that of a child for their parent." She looked at Lily. "You, ma'am, are a disgrace. You used your own mother's love as a weapon, and you used this court as a stage for your final, pathetic performance. It has failed. Therefore," the judge continued, "I am ordering the following, effective immediately. 1. The waiver of financial interest is declared null and void, as it was obtained under fraudulent pretenses." My knees went weak. Brian's hand was the only thing holding me up. 2. The $80,000 is to be returned, in full, to Mrs. Carol Thompson, plus accrued interest and punitive damages, for a total sum of $150,000. I gasped. Greg made a sound like he'd been punched. 3. The fraudulent sale of the property at 124 Willow Creek is canceled. The house that you, Mrs. Thompson, paid for, is awarded solely to you. The Johnsons have 48 hours to vacate the premises. "No!" Lily screamed. "No, you can't!" "And 4, the judge said, her voice rising over Lily's shriek, "due to the egregious nature of the fraud and the clear intent to make the victim look dumb, I am ordering you, Lily and Gregory Johnson, to pay all of Mrs. Thompson's legal fees." She slammed the gavel. "This court is adjourned." It was over. I had won. I hadn't just gotten my money back. I had gotten my house. Brian hugged me. "We did it, Carol," he whispered. "We did it." I looked over at the defense table. Greg was being handcuffed. Because of his threat at the party, the one Brian had reported, the judge had added a criminal charge of witness intimidation. He was being taken into custody. Lily was just sitting there, completely broken, her face in her hands, her whole body shaking in silent, agonizing defeat. I stood up. I picked up my Bible, and I walked out of the courtroom, past the flashing cameras, past the reporters shouting my name, and I never looked back. The victory didn't feel like a victory. Not at first. I went back to the convent that night, and the silence of my small room was deafening. I had won. I had gotten my house back, my money back, my dignity back. Sister Agnes sat with me. She didn't say I told you so. She just held my hand. "It is done, Carol," she said. "The poison is out. Now, you heal." The next 48 hours were a blur. Brian handled everything. He had the locks on the Willow Creek house changed immediately. He had a sheriff's deputy oversee Greg's release and the removal of their belongings. "They're out," he told me over the phone. "They took their clothes and their personal effects. The house is empty. It's yours, Carol. What do you want to do with it?" I had to see it. One last time. Sister Agnes drove me. I stood on the sidewalk, looking at the house I had paid for twice, once with money, once with my soul. It looked cold, empty. I walked inside. They had left in a hurry, and they had left with anger. Ketchup was squirted on the white kitchen walls. A closet door was ripped off its hinges. The forgiveness banner was still crumpled in the fireplace, a monument to their lies. I walked through the rooms, my in-law suite, the dining room, the office where I had found the proof. I felt nothing, no sense of homecoming, no joy. This wasn't my house. It was a crime scene. It was the place where my daughter's soul had died. It was tainted. "I can't stay here," I said to Sister Agnes, who was standing by the door. "I know," she said. I called Brian from the empty kitchen. "Sell it, Brian," I said, my voice echoing in the hollow room. "Sell it, and sell it fast. I don't care about the price. I just want it gone." It sold in a week. Between the $150,000 from the judgment and the money from the sale of that cursed house, I had more money than I had ever dreamed of. But I didn't want a new mansion. I didn't want a fancy car. I wanted peace. I bought a small, 2-bedroom apartment in a quiet building for seniors, just 3 blocks from St. Mary's. It was on the 3rd floor, with a small balcony that got the morning sun. It had a clean, bright kitchen, a walk-in shower with safety bars, and a secure front door with a deadbolt I could control. The first thing I bought was a new bed. The second was a new, leather-bound Bible. I spent the next 6 months breathing. At first, the silence was hard. Every time the phone rang, my heart leaped, thinking it was her, but she never called. I started to fill the silence, not with fear, but with life. I started baking again. I made my lemon poppy seed cakes for the St. Mary's bake sale, and they sold out in an hour. Sister Agnes invited me to join the convent's volunteer group, reading to children at the parish school. Slowly, my world, which had shrunk to the size of a single, locked bedroom, began to expand again. I made friends. There was Marge, a widow who loved mystery novels, and Helen, who taught me how to play pinochle. We'd sit in the apartment's common room, drinking tea, talking about our lives, our aches and pains, and our grandchildren. I was just Carol, a woman among women. I was healing. The nightmares of Greg's raised hand began to fade. One afternoon, about 8 months after the trial, I was having coffee with Brian, just to finalize the paperwork for a donation I was making to the church's legal aid fund. "You're looking good, Carol," he said, smiling. "You look peaceful." "I am," I said, and I meant it. I never hear from them. Do you know? Are they?" Brian's smile faded. He took a sip of his coffee. "It's public record, Carol." It wasn't pretty. They filed for bankruptcy. Of course. The legal fees. The lawsuit from the buyers. They wiped them out. Completely. He paused. And I knew there was more. And? I prompted gently. They're divorced, he said. It was finalized last month. From what I hear, Greg lost his job after the criminal conviction for intimidation. He couldn't find work. He blamed her for the whole thing, for being so arrogant, for that test shoot video. He moved to another state. My heart ached. Not for him, but for her. And Lily? I whispered. Last I heard, Brian said, she's working a retail job at the mall, trying to pay off the bankruptcy debt. She's living in a small, one-bedroom apartment over by the highway. She lost Carol. She lost everything. I thanked him, my mind reeling. Bankrupt, divorced, alone. My daughter, who had clawed and lied and stolen to have a bigger, better life, had ended up with nothing. My small apartment was filled with the light of the late autumn sun. Outside my balcony window, golden leaves spun in the afternoon wind. I should have felt the satisfaction of karma. The air in my kitchen didn't smell of anger or fear anymore. It smelled of cinnamon and warm bread. My life was quiet. It was my own. I had my friends from the church, my volunteer work at the school, and my peace. I thought I had closed that chapter. I thought the story was over. I was wrong. The story had one final page to turn. It arrived a few months later, on a crisp autumn afternoon. With a knock on my door, I opened it, and my heart stopped. Standing in the hallway was Lisa, my granddaughter. She was 9 years old now, and taller, but her eyes were still the same wide, serious, and kind. She was holding a small basket with store-bought cookies. "Hi, Grandma," she said, her voice small and shy. Lisa, oh, baby, was all I could manage, pulling her into the apartment, into a hug so tight I thought she might break. She hugged me back, her small arms wrapping around my neck. "Mom told me to give you this," she whispered, pulling away and handing me a small, crumpled envelope. I opened it. Inside wasn't a check. It was a note, written in Lily's familiar, messy handwriting. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, but Lisa does deserve to know her grandmother." I stood there, silent for a long time. No tears, just a long, slow breath. I had read about the bankruptcy, the divorce. I knew she was working at the mall, living in a tiny apartment. This note, this was the first sign, not of a plan, but of a surrender. "Come in, my love," I said softly, my voice thick. "The buns are still warm." As she stepped inside, she unzipped her backpack, her face suddenly lighting up with an excitement that was heartbreakingly pure. "I have to show you my costume for the school party. Mom made it for me." She pulled out a length of shimmering, golden fabric and a small, glittering crown. She held it up, her face glowing with pride. "Look, Grandma, I'm Queen Esther, just like you told me about." The air left my lungs. Queen Esther. The smell of cinnamon faded. The sunlight from my balcony disappeared. I wasn't 70 years old. I was 8. I was standing in my cold childhood bedroom, my face stinging. My older sister, Nancy, was sobbing in my mother's arms in the hallway. "She hit me," Nancy wailed, cradling a broken toy. "Carol hit me with her doll and punched me in the eye." My mother, tired and overworked, turned her furious eyes on me. "I didn't!" I screamed. "I didn't! She broke it, and she hit herself." It was the truth. I had watched my sister, jealous of my new doll, smash her own toy. Then, with a cold calculation that still chilled me, I watched her pinch her own arm, pinch her own cheek, until a dark, ugly bruise started to form. But I was the difficult one. Nancy was the angel. I was spanked. I was sent to my room, and I sat there, in the dark, consumed by an injustice so total, so profound, I could barely breathe. Later that night, my grandmother, my father's mother, a woman who spoke little but saw everything, came into my room. She didn't say, "I believe you." She didn't have to. She just sat on my bed and stroked my hair. Let me tell you a story, she said. A month later, it was Halloween. Our family was poor. My mother worked 2 jobs. There was no money for costumes, but my grandmother said she would sew them. The night of the church fall festival, she brought 2. For Nancy, she brought a costume that was huge, round, and made of cheap blue felt. There was a little plastic Ken doll sewn into the front, near the stomach. "What is this?" Nancy shrieked. "You," my grandmother said, "are the whale that swallowed Jonah, because sometimes a lie swallows the liar." And, for me, she brought a dress of shimmering gold fabric. It had lace she had cut from an old curtain. She handed me a small crown made of cardboard and glitter, and a string of sparkling plastic beads. "You," she said, her eyes smiling, "are Queen Esther, the woman who spoke the truth to the king, even when she was afraid." That night, at the festival, everyone stared. Nancy was miserable, and everyone kept calling her the whale. But me, I felt beautiful. I felt brave. My grandmother held my hand, leaned down, and whispered, "You see, child? You don't need to scream to prove you're right. You don't need to throw a fit. You just have to be smart. You let the liars make themselves look ridiculous. You just let them show the whole world exactly who they are." I came back to myself. I was in my apartment. The sun was streaming through the balcony door. Lisa, my granddaughter, was twirling in a golden dress. My grandmother's lesson. It had taken me 62 years to understand it. Lily, the night of forgiveness, the cameras, the cashmere dress, the crocodile tears, the test shoot video. She had built her own stage. She had written her own script. She had let her lies swallow her whole. And I had just let her perform. "Grandma?" Lisa's voice was soft, pulling me back. Are you okay? Do you like it?" I looked at my granddaughter, this beautiful, innocent child, dressed as a hero of faith, and I saw that the cycle could be broken. The jealousy of my sister, the greed of my daughter. It didn't have to pass to her. "I love it, baby," I said, my voice thick. "I love it more than you know. You are just like her. Like the queen?" "Yes, my love," I said, a real smile touching my face. "Just like the queen. Now, how about some pudding?" We sat in my small kitchen, eating and talking. She told me about school, about her friends. She loved the apple pudding I served, and she asked me to teach her how to make it. As we stood at the counter, our hands covered in flour, she grew quiet. "Mom says you're the best person she knows," Lisa said suddenly, not looking at me. "But you're still mad at her, aren't you?" I stopped stirring. I looked down at her small head, and I chose my words with care. "No, my love, I'm not angry anymore," I said softly. "I'm just sad. I'm sad because your mother forgot something my own grandmother taught me, that you can't ever be truly happy if you have to stand on someone else's tears to get there." Lisa was quiet for a long time. She just stirred the batter. "Mom cried all night last night," she finally whispered. I put my hand on her shoulder. I looked out the window, at the golden leaves, at the new, peaceful life I had built. "It's okay, baby," I said. "Crying is the start of remorse. And remorse. Remorse is the start of change." That night, after Lisa left, my small apartment was quiet again, filled with the smell of cinnamon and the lingering warmth of her visit. I sat at my small desk and looked at an old photo of Lily, back when she was a little girl, with bright, innocent eyes, before the world had poisoned her. I opened my Bible to the Book of Esther, and that gaudy, orange Halloween invitation fell out, a reminder of the night she tried to turn my pain into her public relations victory. I took out a pen. I had to write it down, even if I would never send it. "Lily," I wrote, "the day you were born, I prayed God would give you a soft heart. I taught you how to love, but somewhere along the way, you only learned how to use love. I used to pray that I could forgive you. Now, I only pray that you learn to feel remorse If you are ever betrayed as I was, remember this: some wounds can only be healed by choosing to live differently. I folded the letter and tucked it back into the pages of Esther, right next to the verse. Perhaps this is the moment for which you were created, and I finally understood. The betrayal. It wasn't God's plan to make me fall. It was His plan to teach me how to stand up. That Christmas, I brought a single candle to the midnight mass at St. Mary's. I didn't pray for anything. I just stood in the back, watching the flame. Father Anthony, the parish priest, stood beside me. "That's a special prayer, Carol," he whispered. I looked at the fire, at how it burned without consuming the wick. "Father," I said, "I've learned that forgiveness isn't about putting out the fire. It's about learning to let it burn without it consuming you." The call came in the deep of winter, when the snow was thick on the ground. Her name, Lily, flashed on my phone screen. I hesitated, then answered. Her voice was thin and tired and broken. "Mom," she whispered, and I could hear her crying. I'm not calling to ask you to forgive me. I just want to say thank you for not letting me continue to lie for my whole life." I was silent, and I looked out the window at the clean, white snow. "I didn't save you, Lily," I said softly. "God did that. But I am still praying for you to learn how to save yourself." She just sobbed, said goodnight, and hung up. And as I looked out at the snow, I felt a blessing for her. Not anger, not even sadness, just a quiet compassion. I'm genuinely curious. If it were you in my place, what would you do? Would you choose to be silent to keep the peace? Or would you dare to face it all to get your voice back? I want to know what you think, because every story is a candle that can light someone else's path. God always blesses, and I firmly believe that courage leads us to better days. Thank you for listening to my story, and please subscribe to the channel if you'd like to hear more.